I'd like to call the July 7th, 2021 work session meeting of Newtown Borough Council to order. Please rise and join me in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone to our first live meeting in a very long time. We are only four this evening, 4 members of council. 2 members were supposed to be joining us remotely, but when you have storms, the bridge is out. And that was the word I got. The conference bridge that would allow them to join by audio is not working. So unfortunately, they will not, Nicole and Tara will not be joining this meeting this evening. Do I have any amendments to the agenda? I have 2. The first is that we're going to table the discussion of the memorial sign policy that is under the President's report until Tuesday, when Tara will be here to run that discussion. Secondly, I'll be making comments regarding the American Rescue Funds under the President's report as well. Are there any other amendments? Okay, if not, public to be heard.
Hi, it's good to be back. I don't know if I've had a comment for a year and a half. As you get ready to vote on whether to approve or not to approve a very local 9/11 memorial event, I want you to consider some facts. The Garden of Reflection 9/11 Memorial is Pennsylvania's official state 9/11 memorial. It commemorates the loss of 2,973 souls who perished on 9/11. This includes 412 New York City emergency workers, first responders, and specifically 343 firefighters and 60 police officers. This state memorial has been holding morning services as well as an evening program, ceremony, every year for the last 15 years. The organization has close ties to the 9/11 survivors. Its founder and board chair is Ellen Saraceni, widow of Victor Saraceni, the pilot of American Airlines Flight 175. The board of directors of the Garden of Reflection is nonpartisan. U.S. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick sits on the board, as does State Rep. Steve Santasero. 18 Bucks County residents were lost on 9/11. While Newtown Borough was spared, nearby communities, including Langhorne, Yardley, Lower Makefield, New Hope, Southampton, and Fairless Hills, experienced heartbreaking losses. Rather than approving a very local mini memorial, I believe council should instead encourage residents of Newtown to stand with mourners from our neighboring communities and from all across the country in honoring the 2,973 victims of an international terrorism attack. Newtown residents will not have to travel far to do this. The Garden of Reflection is just 2.5 miles from Pickering Field. Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to be back. I second your thoughts there. I wasn't prepared to come up here and give a discussion, but I got to tell you, I don't understand the point of your.
Excuse me, John, could you just give your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, John Burke, 301 South Norwood. I'm very confused here. Ours is on Friday the 10th, and really the whole idea of the event and the reason why we put it together, not only because I do have close ties to the event. I lost people I know there, okay? And I actually was there that day. So it's very special to me, and I thought it was a very special moment in this community to be able to come together, especially during COVID, and light the neighborhood up with luminaries so that when we were done, we could come back as a community and really reflect on what happened that day and be grateful and thankful that we have first responders that give their lives every day and still are willing to do it. In fact, I did it on Friday because I plan on being at the Garden of Reflection on Saturday. That day is very important to me, and it's the 20-year anniversary. So I don't know what the point was. I hope you guys can see it. This is very important to me, and I think it's important to the borough. I wasn't prepared to even begin to think about defending doing something like this. So it's very strange to me. But I would ask that when you do bring up the special event application, you take it seriously and hopefully see it the way I do, and that it's good for the community, brings the community together. It honors those that unfortunately we lost, but it also recognizes today's first responders and says thank you to them. And then at the same time, hopefully brings the community together on that night as they walk from the park, from Pickering Field back to their homes. This year, they could do it, a little more gatherings and just reflect and see the peacefulness of the luminaries that we have out there. So I just ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Salvatore, 148 North Elm Avenue. It seems like only yesterday we were here. And I have to jump in on what John just said because I don't know where that came from Diane. I'm sorry. I don't know if you were there last year, Diane, or not. I was. I helped put it on with John. What John forgot to mention, we honored those who ran into the buildings. And we honored our responders here in our community who would do the same thing today and who constantly reach out and help. And one of the things John didn't mention was he sold those luminaries and he helped raise $6,100, which we gave to Shop with a Cop. And at Christmas time, kids in need in our community were taken out with our local police and they went and they got presents. So all in all, it was a great event. A lot of nice things happened. And our first responders were able to reach out once again through the generosity of our community by simply buying luminaries. So I hope you will consider doing it. I don't think there's a reason why you shouldn't. So thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Courtney Lang, 102 Jefferson Street, and I just wanted to make a couple comments to kind of bringing this somewhere in the middle. I was not a part of last year's ceremony here, but I've also been a very big supporter of the Garden of Reflection and many things for 9/11. It was my second day of my senior year of high school when that happened. The girl sitting next to me lost her father. Though we didn't lose anyone in Newtown, I think it's a really important day to reflect in whatever way you need to and what brings the most impact for you. As John said, it's one way we can do it, and offering our members of the community a way to do that here at home and celebrate our own first responders is one way we can do that. It offers our residents an option. And as much as I will be at the Garden of Reflection, I've worked with a lot of them over the years. One of my best friends from grade school, her dad was a pilot. He knew them very well. And I think in the sense of looking at our community and understanding where we need to be on this issue, we need to think not just about referring people to the Garden of Reflection. It's the 20th year. It's going to be a very impactful celebration there and memorial. And this might not be the year to take that away from the borough, being that it's the 20th year. So in thinking about this, we need to think about our community too, not just the community around us, but what can we do as a whole. So I agree that we can support going towards the Garden of Reflection, and saying that we should certainly be there and support our other community members and see who else has been affected by this and be a part of that community too. But we also don't necessarily need to take away from that at home. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. First off, I'd like to welcome everybody back and thank you for being out here this evening. It's nice to see everybody in person instead of in a little square on my computer. So the first thing I'd like to know is if we could have someone make a motion to approve a special event application for the annual Black and White Dinner fundraiser sponsored by the Newtown Theater on Saturday, September the 11th, 2021 from 7 to 10 p.m. on North State Street. There will be a road closure starting at 4 and going until 11, and there will be no rain date.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just looking at the application, I'd just like to, is there any representative here from Newtown Theater? So in the application itself, there was no acknowledgement that there might be additional police services needed, and that was a comment
Chief
by Chief
has,
Sabbath.
yes, he has gotten that taken care of.
So there is confirmation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And the idea of supposedly needing to contact neighbors before the application,
I don't know about that. That I can't tell you, but I know that Chief has commented on the road closure.
yeah, I mean, it's a substantial road closure, lots of people, but I know the application says will be notified prior to the event. That's not what the application form prefers, but as long as there is a agreement and acknowledgement that they will be, and certainly getting, because it's in a way contingent that if enough people were against it, which I don't think they will be since it's been going on for years.
Yes. And I think they've all been contacted in the past and have been positive, from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, I'll call for a vote. Public wish to be heard in the Black and White Dinner? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, I'd like to have someone make a motion to approve a special event application for the 9/11 Memorial Event sponsored by John Burke on Friday, September the 10th, 2021 from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Pickering Field. Again, no rain date.
So moved?
I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
So on this form, there was no mention of the insurance, be it bond or notification that the insurance would be in place. John, is that in order?
So it was said, just so that it gets on the record, that John said it was the same insurance company as last year that names the borough as an additional insured.
Any other comments? Okay. The public's already spoken on this. Did anyone else need to speak to this application? If not, I'll call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next motion would be to approve a special event application for the Newtown Rotary and Family Promise fundraiser sponsored by the Newtown Rotary Club on Sunday, September the 19th, 2021, from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. on State Street between Center Avenue and Penn Street. Rain date is Sunday, September the 26th, 2021.
So moved?
Second.
Is anyone here representing this event? Okay, could you come up and tell us a little bit more about what's planned and give your name?
Nathan Brees, for the record. So Newtown Rotary has a subsidiary called Next Gen Rotary that we started earlier this year. And it's in conjunction with Newtown Rotary. So Newtown Rotary would be the official sponsor, albeit the subsidiary would be the main proponent of hosting it and doing all the legwork for the most part. It is a very similar dynamic to how Harvest Day is or Welcome Day is, but it is going to be a fundraiser, which I think the NBA does Welcome Day. Is that correct? The NBA does Welcome Day, so very similar to that type of thing, but it will be a fundraiser. So all funds will be going to some type of nonprofit, whether that be Rotary, the club for Newtown, or Rotary International and their profit. But then also we do want funds to go to Family Promise, which is a organization that helps with finding shelter for like homeless families so they can stay together, usually utilizing like local churches and stuff of that nature. And they're an organization that Rotary's worked with and Newtown Press has worked with. An organization that our community has worked with in the past. As far as the logistics of how the event's gonna work, so we wanna block off, so it's Center Avenue, so it'd be the south side of Center to the north side of Penn. We wanted to go down to the Stockton Works. So whichever street honestly just makes it more convenient down there for the police, whether that be Penn or whether that just be blocking it off right at Chancellor. But then the goal would be traffic coming southbound would turn right onto Center, go onto Sycamore and continue down to the bypass. And traffic coming off of the bypass going north would go onto Penn Street or Chancellor and go down Chancellor. And then either turn left onto Center and continue on State or continue down to was that be Washington, whichever they're en route to go to. The event will be like vendors, which will also be very similar to how they have Welcome Day. But our goal is that the vendors won't just be businesses who pay us to have a table and then they just have a bunch of brochures sitting there. The goal is that the business to participate. The goal is that the business participating can participate for free as long as they add value to the day. Which is why we're leaning more to calling it a block party, because every single vendor who will be there or business along State Street who has something set up there it'll be something engaging. So whether they're gonna help with a bounce house, or they're gonna help with a small mini golf course, or they're gonna help with a dunk tank, or they're gonna help with face painting. I've already talked to multiple business owners along State Street. Rich at Countryside Framing said he would love to do face painting. Ned Cigars already said they would love to do some stuff. So, it's going to be a very different atmosphere than Welcome Day in that sense. The part of where the money is going to come from is going to be a few different parts. Some restaurants that we've already spoken with have agreed to be there with their product and donate a portion of sales to our cause. Some other things we've dabbled with is, if we have a bunch of businesses together who have kind of a game set up where people could buy a wristband for $10, $20, and they would be able to spend the whole day doing all the different things that are there, kind of like a fair or a circus type of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So we picked Sunday because it'll be the least busy day on State Street. Hopefully, that's a weekend. I want to say Chief Sabbath said they have a beer fest in the
It is the day after.
the day after. So I know the rain date is the week after. So if we want to, that date works good too. If that one is more convenient, that would kind of be up to you guys, whatever you think.
Well, I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
For council. First of all, you're closing State Street between Center and Penn.
Yes.
That's a very short block. There's not a lot of room there for all the things that you're talking about.
Like as far as like the street not being wide?
The distance of State, all these things that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Be within a one
Yeah.
block length.
You're proposing to give us more space?
No, I'm not. I'm questioning how well you've figured this out, like how many vendors you think you're going to have, how much room you're going to have.
Yeah.
And have the businesses within those blocks been within that block on both sides been notified, and are they in agreement to have this in front of their establishments?
So, yes. Most, if not all of them have been. I have not had personal conversations. So my business is on State Street. I'm 16 South State Street, so which does not fall in between Center and Penn. But just due to that, I'm always conversing with the other businesses along State Street. But then other members of, yeah, well, you come up here if you want. Yeah, so this is Danielle, she can introduce herself, and then Stephanie is also with our Next Gen Rotary, and then Paul is he is also a Rotarian, a seasoned Rotarian, so he's here with us as well.
I'm Danielle Wittig. I'm at the south end of State Street in which we would be closing the streets. It is a small portion, but there is also businesses like in our back parking lot, which thank you guys gave us that space. We'll have stuff going on within that space as well. Our idea was to utilize whatever we could with the businesses that are located in there, incorporating Holy Chic and the beauty and braids that are now there, doing something with our business, but in our space, so it still stays safe and legal, as well as other places in there. I have had discussion, but not definitive, because we had to wait to hear from you guys whether it was a yes or a no. So that's the answer to that for our side of the street.
What were you talking about other spaces beyond the street? I'm unclear as to what.
So Triple Sun, for example, will be giving back a portion of what we make that day, which is a business that is on the street, whereas we don't need to take up space on the street. A food vendor could set up a tent outside of our business, and that would be one place that would be giving back and donating, and anybody within that space could as well, in addition to other people that are from the town that are willing to give back.
Other members of council have questions?
I think one thing, excuse me, you want to go, Bob? I was just going to say, there are a couple parking lots that are back there, and I don't know whether you've talked to the Godwin Building about their parking lot. Those are places that I think she was referring to in regards to places off the street that could be utilized if they would have the permission to do that.
Right, well, that's what I was wondering. If
So
that's
in our lot, we can only fit one food truck, but whatever food truck we would have could be there and would be giving back a part of their sales as well. I've already talked to a couple, but again, I wasn't going to lock anybody in until it was a go, because their time is also valuable.
I actually look at it from the other side. Instead of calling it a small area, I think there are a lot of businesses there. And unlike we were just discussing the Newtown Theater event, which has had a number of years previously, and there's a history of the businesses being okay with shutting down the street. I think in this case it's important to really know that the businesses are okay with that street being shut down for pretty much the whole day, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Do you know what percentage of businesses are closed on Sunday in the borough on that street?
Well, that particular section,
Yes, I can find that out.
the Pat's Restaurant is open from 8 to 2.
Okay.
The hardware store is open from
Right.
8 to 3.
Right.
Starbucks is open all day long. The record store is open. Of all of State Street. No, Gary's not open on that day. So, but looking at State Street, that is the most busiest
Right.
section of State Street. Plus, Friends Meeting is right behind there, and their meeting is on Sunday mornings. And I'm just thinking of the proximity of who is where, plus the liquor store is open on Sunday mornings, and that is the busiest liquor store in Bucks County. So closing that particular street is critical on, even though it's quiet mornings. And I'm wondering why you didn't think of an alternative of asking us to use the municipal lot behind the hardware store.
Yeah, so the other two thoughts that we had was, and to get to your question, the one was Sycamore Street, which is, the one that Welcome Day uses and all that. We purposely did not want to use Sycamore because I don't believe the NBA is doing Welcome Day this year from talking to, the different people there, but we don't want to be considered as the same event. We don't want to take up their spot, fall time, Sycamore, we want to keep them separate. As far as the municipal lot, you're saying fit in the entire event in that parking lot? Is that
Behind Starbucks.
behind Starbucks? Can you have, yeah,
Cars in there.
can you have liquor there?
Wait, cars, you know, can't have liquor anywhere on
Right.
State Street. Cars within that parking lot, though?
No, but there's no, it's very infrequently used on Sunday mornings in
Mm-hmm.
the area, except for the Starbucks parking lot, okay?
So to your point,
You're
though,
talking about closing a major access route in the town for the greater portion of a day when those businesses are open. And I'm looking
Yeah.
at what are your alternatives?
Yeah,
And when you mentioned alcohol in the parking lot, are you talking about alcohol on the street also?
no, it's exactly the way that we're set up as is now, which is drinking inside a food truck is in our parking lot. That's all. There's a tent out there still from extension of premise from everything with COVID, but that's not, well, there won't be alcohol walking around town, no. As far as the businesses that are within that, be it the hardware house, the Newtown Book and Record, the small, I can't speak for Starbucks, but I am sure that they would be more than willing to set up outside and have the ability to have more sales because there is more foot traffic from the event.
If I could just make I'm sorry, Sue, go ahead. No.
It's interesting our different reactions to this, because my reaction was, finally, we're doing something on that block as opposed to it always being on the other block.
Right.
And I would think that that would be a real advantage for the businesses there, actually.
Yeah, it would be very helpful, and it gives the south side of State Street more exposure. Not that this is what that event is about at all, I promise.
I was just going to suggest, why don't you come back on our next meeting with some concrete requests or comments from the businesses that are there, and I think that would help the members of council, make a better decision if you had all of the businesses that you had talked about, there in front of, that you've talked to and gotten positive input or whatever it is from them. And also, as Bob said, Councilman Suakis, in regards to possibly using that other parking lot. And I think that would be something council and the chief would have to work on too, from that standpoint. So, I think that would be a recommendation.
Okay, and do you have any other things that you would suggest before that time that would be helpful so that when you guys go to do this again, we're prepared?
A map would be excellent.
Love a
Draw
map.
this out, show where you're going to put things, show what the traffic's going to be like, show that you've met with the various businesses on the street and that they agree. Feedback from businesses when we have these events is not that it improves their business at all. In fact, it decreases their business because people can't get to them or they don't see them. You would think it would be a way to increase business, but that's not the feedback that we generally get.
Okay.
So you need to find out that those businesses are okay. You need to map this out. You need to talk with the chief more. He had suggested that he might have trouble getting people to be enough police to work the next day because the Brew Fest was the day
Okay.
before. So that needs to be worked out. So you need to, your plan doesn't gel enough yet for us to really be able to make a decision.
okay,
Okay?
that's fine.
Really quick, would the date change also help to the following week?
Probably, but look into it, see what else is happening on that day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I have a motion to table this one?
Motion, well, do we have a pending motion on,
There is a motion on the table right now.
so how do we address?
You just take a motion to table. Motion to table always takes precedence over every other motion on the floor.
So Marv, why don't you move the table?
You just did, Bob.
Oh, I just did?
You can move the table, it's fine. Okay, is there a second?
Yes.
I'll second.
All right.
Table your own motion.
Okay, all right, and we need to vote on that, right? Yes, okay, all those in favor to table?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this is tabled till, did you want to come back on Tuesday, or did you want to you want to wait and come back next month?
Tuesday's good,
All right,
making it work.
Before you run away, if we provide extra police on that day, is there a charge for that?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, there is,
yeah, it was in the application.
it's all there.
We don't want you to have a surprise bill.
Yeah, I had a question about that, and I might have to talk to chief, but are those due balances due before the event, or can funds raised from the event then be
We
used?
know where you live.
Well,
Okay.
you will be billed for
will be
how
billed.
much police time you needed.
After the event?
You should
Okay,
talk
perfect.
with the chief to find out how much he anticipates.
That's fine.
We work with you,
Yeah, that's fine.
promotes the community, but our viewpoint is it has to be a safe event.
Right.
And then a fun event,
Yep.
But safety's always first. Safety's always first. And the other thing is, you may want to check with the Brewfest people about, if you're having an all-day event, what kind of bathroom facilities you need to have for this. Because we've had problems with neighbors surrounding the venues for the Brewfest.
Right.
So that is a particular health concern that we have of.
Do you know who's doing
Where all
their?
these people going to go to the bathroom?
And I do.
So, I mean, would that make it more convenient in the sense that everything would already be there and it could just?
Maybe
More than that, it's
indispensable.
necessary, you're going to have a crowd there, you need to provide facilities.
Well, I'm saying like if they, so like I know in the application it said you need to have trash cans.
Yes.
You know, it'd be easier if they were there the day before and the trash cans were already there to then just be used the next day.
I mean, when do they arrive and when do they get picked up?
No, I think he's talking about using the ones from the Brewfest.
Right.
Well, each event is responsible for their own trash.
Right. Gotcha.
And their
So it makes no difference.
facilities.
There probably will be no empty cans.
Right. Makes no difference. Yeah, I didn't see the facilities in the application, so that's good to know. Is there like what do I need to know for that?
Suggest you talk to the fire department who runs the Brewfest, okay? So
Okay.
about
All right.
the size, because this is a first-time event, we don't know what the size of the crowd is gonna have.
Right.
You know, if you get 2 people, that's one thing. If you get 200 people,
All right.
talking about a different health concern,
Right.
especially from this length of time.
And you have people in your organization, in the Rotary, that I'm sure have run events and will know what
Yes.
facilities they need. So put that together, make sure
Yeah.
that you've covered all your bases, because we're not really supposed to be helping you design your event. You're supposed to be bringing your event to us, and then we say, okay, looks good, go for it, as opposed to us needing to ask these kinds of details.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you.
Probably
Thank
the
you.
event that is most similar to yours in terms of length of time and kind of the area would be the car show that happens. And I'm sure that some of your members are familiar with the types of facilities that are, used for that.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay.
Next, I'd like to have a motion to approve the Newtown Library 5K on Market Day, sponsored by the Newtown Library Company on Saturday, October the 2nd, 2021, from 9 to 10 a.m. The race route is on the south side of the borough and into the township. There's no rain date for that event, and it's the one that we've used in the past. The route is the one that has been used in the past.
I move to approve the Newtown Library 5K.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, does that route cross Washington?
Yes,
Okay,
in one spot.
in one spot, okay. And it finishes at the library.
Correct.
Any other comments? Any comments from the audience? Okay, if not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Final motion for this evening, motion to approve the special event application for the 12th Annual Beer Fest sponsored by the Newtown Fire Association on September the 18th, 2021, from 12:30 until 5:30 p.m. at the Stocking Works property located at 301 South State Street. And again, there is no rain date for that event.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any comments? Questions? Any comments from the audience? Okay, hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Special event reminder, we have Movies in the Park sponsored by the Rec Board, which will feature the movie Babe on Wednesday, July 14th, and Free Willy on Wednesday, July 21st, from approximately 7 to 10 p.m. at the Linton Memorial Park on Lincoln Avenue and Penn Street. The rain dates are the following evenings. That's an event reminder. The next thing I have is that we have been supporting and help sponsoring the Tour of Honor, sponsored by Bucks County, and that's the mission and the sole purpose of the Tour of Honor is to transport United States military veterans from Bucks County area to Washington, D.C. to visit memorial buildings and other places that promote and represent the ideals of the United States. In the past, from 2016 until 2019, we have been supporting it with a donation of $300. So I'd like to know if we could have someone at this time, unless you need further information. I think there's a packet that was circulated in explaining all of this, but I do have one here with me to donate $300 to the Tour of Honor and be sent to Bucks County Tour of Honor in Doylestown.
I move to donate $300 to the Bucks County Tour of Honor.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Council President, that is all I have, and thank you for bearing with me through all of those motions and the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, moving on to the President's report. As I had said, we're tabling discussion regarding the memorial sign policy. Tara has asked that you watch your email, Council, for information being pulled together from our previous discussions so that you'll have information on which to base discussion at the next meeting when it should be on the agenda on Tuesday. The next item on the President's report has to do with the borough manager position. The next step in this process is to put together a small working group of council to help draft a job description for the borough manager. And so if you are interested in serving on this committee, Tara has asked that you email her and let her know, and she will select the 3 members of council who will be taking on this task and then bringing information back to council. I have a reminder, the Name the Park entry deadline is this Friday, July 9th. So if you haven't had an opportunity yet to name the park on Court Street, take this opportunity now. There are no prizes. There are no winners announced. Only the pride that if your name gets chosen, that you were responsible for naming the park. And the application is on the borough website.
Are we going to, go ahead, Bob.
Question for Judy. Is there a file for us to look at those names? Because I saw some of the names come in, but some folks told me there were more names, but I don't know whether they're coming in a cumulative fashion.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, they are in share file under general information. I've put naming of the park, and then I've distinguished between residents and businesses, and then other entries that have come in. And there's a number of really good suggestions. I'd say there's somewhere between, I don't know, maybe 12 and 20 ideas, different names. So it's been great. Thanks to everybody who has been participating and adding their suggestions. It's been fun to see.
Julia, would you explain how the name will be selected?
Well, actually, I haven't decided that yet.
Okay, thank you. Take that under advisement.
Yes, yes. Well, since Friday is the deadline, then we should have a way to select the name by Tuesday. I have some ideas, but I have not settled on one. Okay. Solicitor's report.
Thank you. We have 2 items for discussion this evening, actually continued discussion this evening. First is one matter that has been discussed frequently over the last year, and that is the short-term rental ordinance. Everyone should have gotten a copy of the most recent draft last Friday. And in the email that went out from Nicole, there were 2 questions that we needed some direction on, which are listed in the email. If you'd like me to read them, I will be happy to, but I think everyone may have that email in front of them. This is, again, we've been discussing this a lot over the past year. We think it's finally close to being done, but we need answers on direction on those 2 questions.
So the first question from this email is whether we would like to include guest houses in the type of units that could be rented as a short-term rental. And so my question is, what is the definition of a guest house that we might be considering?
I think when you're referring to a guest house, you're referring to a structure that is not part of the main structure of the house, that has a separate building on the property that is not part of the main structure on the property.
And how does this differ from someone who has, say, a room and a small bathroom over their garage?
In some ways, it wouldn't differ. If the garage is separate from the property, if there's a separate entrance, that would probably then begin to fall into that category of a guest house, because it is a separate structure. So in many ways, it would not differ.
And so is there a need to, if we are allowing, in the ordinance in its current form, we are allowing people to rent out individual rooms in their home, it didn't have to be the whole building and so on. Do we have to then specify, if we were going to permit someone to rent out the, let's say the playroom over the garage as a room, would that, is there a reason to define that separately and pull that out? Or if we're just already saying, well, you can rent out any part of the structures that are on your property?
Based on the definition of a dwelling in the zoning ordinance, we believe that guest houses would be excluded unless you specifically allow for them to be included as part of the short-term rentals.
Okay. And if this was already an approved living unit above a garage, say some people already have an apartment up there, would that, and they could they rent that out separately, or does that have to be considered a guest house?
The way our zoning ordinance defines that a little differently than it defines a guest house, but it would be kind of fall into the same category of a structure separate and apart from the main structure.
Okay.
So my opinion is that any rental of ancillary structure, I guess that's what it's called, should follow the rules that are required for renting an ancillary structure. In other words, it had to have been built before that certain year, you know, whatever, you know, if we decide to extend it to other structures, it should fulfill all the requirements that are needed to allow it to be a rental unit. So in other words, no, you know, room that just happens to have a bathroom, you know, to be rented. And I think we have a pretty fixed set of rules for what kind of back building can be rented.
So if you're referring to making sure that the definition of guest house in the short-term rental ordinance would include, would mirror what we're saying is for rental, an accessory structure, that can be done.
I think that is the most lenient we should be. I mean, it's up for discussion whether we should exclude outbuildings or not.
So would we put that in the first paragraph, which talks about it applying to all residential dwellings, conversions of non-residential dwellings, et cetera, and accessory dwellings, accessory structures? Or, I mean, would that be where you would put a reference to accessory structures?
I will defer to my drafts person as to where we would put it.
Okay. Were you going to use the term guest house, or were you going to use the term accessory structures? What would be the? Yeah, you're not on a mic. Can you sit somewhere? We have a couple mics here. That's right. You won't be on YouTube.
Another thing to keep in mind is that the zoning ordinance does not actually define guest house. It just says that a dwelling does not include a guest house. So however we want to go about it, to be as specific as we need to be, we would just build it into that definition under this ordinance.
Okay. So the question to council is, do we want to include the concept of a guest house, however this is termed, however Nicole works it into the ordinance, in something that someone could rent out, or are we not going to permit that?
I personally don't see any disadvantage. I'm not sure what concerns we have about that.
Okay.
No, I
I'm looking at Bob.
don't think there is any
Yeah,
disadvantage.
okay, so somehow we want to include that so that this would allow someone to rent whatever space they had on their property that was a legal space then, basically.
Legally rentable
Okay,
already.
okay.
Could be short-term as well as.
We'll work that language.
All right, so you'll work on that one, okay. And then the second question that was whether we wanted to take a look at the section that declares that any violation of the ordinance, of this particular ordinance, is considered a nuisance. And this, Nicole, would you like to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so the only reason that I flagged this is simply because this was a question that came up with the draft and how we wanted to handle or define nuisance. What is in there right now is based on the model ordinance. So it basically just says any violation of this ordinance is a nuisance. And the way that our existing ordinances are a little different. They say, you know, for example, having to do with trees. Like if you fail to trim the trees in the way that is required under the ordinance, that is considered a nuisance, but not necessarily everything under that ordinance, like anything that you do differently. Like if you don't, you know, apply for a permit the right way, you know, that's not necessarily a nuisance under some of our existing ordinances. And so I didn't know if we wanted to restructure that just for consistency with how things are here.
And how did you propose to restructure it?
So it's up to council. We could specifically focus on the section, it's standards. So section 100-7 is short-term rental standards. And so that kind of lists out like the way things should be, right? So any violation of those standards could be deemed a nuisance, and maybe that would make a little bit more sense and be more consistent with how we define nuisance in other ordinances that already exist. It's simply just very broad as it is right now. So that was the only reason that was flagged.
I guess the highest level of nuisance would be something that affected other people. Probably the second level of nuisance would be something that affected the borough. I assume there are things on there that aren't really much of a nuisance if there are things to do with how many towels you have to have or something like that. That's not really a nuisance.
There's certainly parts of the ordinance that are more administrative in nature, and then there are parts that, if violated, would certainly affect other people and quality of life concerns that we would have, which is the reason why we have this, you know, why we're considering this ordinance to begin with. So I think the narrowing would just be to focus on those quality of life issues, which I think are encapsulated in the standards section.
So would you propose to add that, to move that section that's called nuisance and put that in section 7 and just as the end, like any violation of all the above will be considered a nuisance? Is that how you?
Organizationally, if that makes the most sense, we can do it that way. We could do that, we can move it and build it into section 107, or if we want to keep it separate, we would just say anything that violates section 100-7 is considered a nuisance.
Oh, that seems like a better way. Okay. Yeah.
What's the consequence of being a nuisance?
So I would actually have to review what the penalties are under our other ordinances, because although I did take a look at those when I was doing this, I don't know what the penalties are off the top of my head. So
Well, there's a 100-14 is the violations and penalties section, and it deals with any person, partnership, corporation, or other entity who violates or permits a violation of the provisions of this chapter shall, upon conviction in a summary proceeding, pay a fine of not less than 100 nor more than 600 per violation, plus all court costs and reasonable attorney's fees. It also allows for repeat repeated violations for us to deny permits moving forward. And I think what we're trying to, some of these are going to be more quality of life issues if there's problems with trash or if there's problems with the way the renters are behaving and impacting the neighborhood. Those are the ones that would more be the more significant fine, and also being able to prevent them from continuing to rent their property. We're saying if they do something administrative, that maybe shouldn't fall into that category of nuisance.
Is there a prerequisite to have a permit to do this?
I don't know if I understand. A permit for what?
If you wanted to have this type of facility on your property,
Yes,
you have to
yep,
get the permit
yes,
ahead of
yes,
time.
Yep, that's
So
in the
part of the
ordinance.
penalty could be the revocation of that.
That's in there.
Right, and if there are repeated violations, the permit can be revoked or not issued.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Are there any other questions or comments about this draft? The last time we talked about this in a council meeting, the sense was that our next step was to forward this on to the borough's planning commission to see if they had any input. Does everyone feel comfortable with doing that at this point? And then once they've given us some input, then we would do the next step in terms of advertising it as an ordinance for adoption. Do we need a vote for that?
Not if you're just sending it on
Sending it
to
on.
the planning commission, right? It's not any formal action is needed.
Okay, okay. Any,
Council's in agreement.
yeah, are you all in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so after our solicitor has cleaned up a little bit, taking our comments into account, fixing those couple things, Judy, can you forward it on to the Borough Planning Commission, ask them to take a look at their convenience? Or I guess at their earliest convenience? Okay, thank you. Okay, very good, thank you very much. Okay, next.
The second item is to continue the discussion regarding a single hauler solid waste ordinance. We have provided council with a draft of this ordinance. It is taken from another Bucks County municipality that has made the transition to a system of bidding for a single hauler in the last several years. If passed in its current form, would provide for a single hauler for all residential and municipal owned properties. Multifamily and commercial would be exempt. And there would also be an exception for homeowners associations who have a current contract with a waste hauler. They would not have to go to the single hauler until their current contract expired. So you have the draft, and you can answer any questions you may have.
Was there a specific section that was the primary one that was changed, or is it to allow the single hauler, or?
It's totally different.
This is a brand-new ordinance, right?
So I have to say, my reaction when I read it is, could we not fix ours? This is 25 pages long. I don't think anyone's ever going to read it. And that's one of my concerns about our ordinances. A lot of people don't take the time to read them, and I understand that. But this particular one, I really struggled getting through. It seems like there should maybe be something simpler that we can do with our existing ordinance, or am I dreaming?
So, I understand what you're saying, and I sympathize. But we have found over the years that in dealing with trash collection, that it is better to be as thorough and as detailed as possible. Because we want any bid spec that's going to be put together, if council chooses to do this, to be as thorough and detailed as possible, because it truly is with waste hauling that we found over the years. It is everything you don't anticipate becomes a problem on day one. And so many many of these ordinances are written to cover every potential area. So then this just becomes part of what the bid spec that's going to go out to all of the waste haulers. Waste haulers are a historically litigious group, and many municipalities that go out for hauling contracts find themselves involved in litigation because of little mistakes in the bid specs. So we thought that it was necessary to be as thorough as possible. Clearly, if we wanted to go back and just sort of make some adjustments to our current ordinance, we could take a look at that. But we thought that since this is a new way of doing things, and since possibly going out to bid, it was better to be belt and suspenders and duct tape and everything else.
Would this proposed ordinance supersede the existing one? In its totality?
Yes.
And it would handle the hours for the commercial properties as well?
Yes.
Well, what it does for the commercial properties is they have their own, they're not under this particular one. The commercial properties have their own dumpsters, they make their own, they have their own contracts.
Still timing and things of long.
Right, right. One thing that I saw that wasn't in here were the pickup dates. So right now, we only allow pickup on Tuesdays and Fridays, but
That'd be part of your bid spec.
that would be in the bid spec as opposed to being enshrined in the ordinance.
And the reason that we often will not put that in the ordinance is it's easier to change a bid spec than it is to change an ordinance. If we put in Tuesdays and Thursdays, and your low bid came in and they said we'd like to do Monday and Thursday, and you decided you wanted to do that, instead of us having to go back in and change the ordinance, it's easier to just change that in the bid spec.
So when you say days of the week are now in bid specs, that makes it sound like this ordinance only covers if we're going toward single hauler.
Correct.
In other words, if we adopt this ordinance, it doesn't leave us with the flexibility to stay with the current system if, for example, none of the bids are acceptable.
This ordinance follows another municipality that made the transition into single hauler. If you're saying that you would like to have that option open of not going to single hauler, I can't point to anything specific in here right at this moment that says would allow it or not allow it, but that is something we could take a look at.
I think the intent was to not lock ourselves in. Do I remember correctly?
The importance of this flexibility is that in the recent newspapers, some of the haulers have announced they're only going to do a single day because of the shortage of both equipment and personnel. So, and there was one municipality in New Jersey that canceled their contract, which left council to have the job of picking up trash. So we have to be mindful of the economic conditions and having the flexibility to stay where we are, or if we decide it's better to have a single hauler, we have the flexibility to do that. But with the current economic status of the haulers, announcing they don't have either equipment or the personnel, we may find ourselves with no hauler.
Right.
So we need the flexibility of going either way. Thank you, Marv.
Many municipalities are dealing with not just those that pick up their own trash, but those that have private companies picking it up. Many of them are dealing with interruptions in the schedule because of staffing issues for these companies and because of equipment, and because they were just so overwhelmed at times during the pandemic and the shutdown that a lot of these companies lost a lot of people because of the amount of trash that was being generated, the amount of residential trash that was being generated during the pandemic.
One of the things we've experienced is because of the shortage of either equipment or personnel, the haulers are coming in on days not approved. And they're ignoring our supervision. and they're now facing potential fines. And that's a dilemma for how we manage.
And it's days they're not permitted, and it's hours they're not permitted. And when they are asked or threatened, they will tell you that the ability to pick up the trash at that date or that time is more important than a $500 or $1,000 fine under the contract. Because if they have people and they have trucks, they'd rather pick up the trash on Wednesday when it's supposed to be picked up on Thursday. They'll deal with the fine. And a lot of municipalities are dealing with this right now.
So I'm trying to figure out what we should do with the ordinance. I mean, this is the draft just came out for us to take a look at. We all have some different ideas. I'm wondering if we should all take a look ourselves, read them, collect our thoughts, and then generate, perhaps somebody email me with your ideas and your questions, and I'll put them all together at one and then send them off to our solicitor to look at all at once and see if it can come up with answers or, adjustments so that our solicitor are not dealing with 6 emails coming, or emails coming from 6 different people that are mostly overlapping and are the same. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Okay. All right. So over the next week or so, send me your thoughts, and we'll move forward on that.
And that's all we have this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions for the solicitor? All right, budget and finance.
I move to approve the professional service invoices for May 2021.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I do have a comment that Tara sent me about the ARPA funds, which I wanted to read to you. This is the American Recovery Plan money that is, the borough is being offered. Tara has written, the borough has completed the necessary registrations for the American Rescue Plan Act funds designated for the borough and is awaiting a final confirmation for submission of the application. Meanwhile, council should look to receive the spending guidelines and a request for ideas on use of the funds shortly, once Budget and Finance has finished compilation of an initial list with input from the treasurer and the chief of police. As noted in a prior meeting, the amount designated for the borough over this year and next is a total of $234,459.04.
What's the deadline for that application? I thought it was coming right up.
The deadline for completing the application to say, yes, we want the money, is at the end of July. That was extended. There are a couple steps you have to go through different government agencies, and coordinating that has been slow for everyone. So that's the process that we're in right now. And then once that's taken care of, it says, yes, we want the money, and then we figure out what we're spending it on, and then as we use it, we have to justify that we've used it according to the guidelines.
So am I understanding that we simply have to confirm, once we get the confirmation of our registration, we have to confirm that we want the funds by the end of this month? Is that what you're saying?
I believe
Okay.
I believe that's what that is.
Thank you.
And to give them her direct deposit account. Yeah. Okay, anything else under budget and finance? Okay. Any old business?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We accomplished the street cleaning. The neighbors were very helpful in moving their cars in the alternative directions on the alternative days. Unfortunately, then Pico and Asplunk unannounced showed up to trim trees, and Verizon and their contractors showed up unannounced, and they were fixing telephone poles and replacing poles. So notwithstanding all the efforts of council, the staff, and the community, we did have some debris in the streets, which we did not expect and could not plan for because the utilities failed to properly contact us in advance. So to the extent that there was debris after we cleaned the streets, it wasn't because we didn't plan. It was because of the utilities.
Thanks.
There's a second part to that. We will be cleaning the storm drains next. So if you see storm drains with cumulative debris, there's special EPA requirements that we have to measure that in some dimension, but that is the next phase of what we're going to do on street cleaning.
Yeah, I just wanted to give an update on the work on 112 Court Street, which is the part of Bird in Hand that the borough owns now. I've been trying to get some estimates to do some work on the roof and to paint the building. And I'm having the same sort of experience that most of us are having at home. Everyone's got a lot of work, and it's hard to get materials. That said, some good news, I think, on the roof. We have a couple of quotes to replace the cedar, but the third contractor believes that we have about 5 years' life left in it. So his recommendation is that we not do anything with it yet, which would give us time to both look for a grant to do the work, and if we can't get a grant, at least budget for it appropriately. So I think that's good news. The metal part of the roof does need work, though, and it looks like that's going to cost somewhere around $5,000 to $10,000, depending which quote we look at. So we're making progress, but it's kind of slow.
One more. We are completing our inventory of the crosswalk areas that will be repainted this year. We've already ordered the paint because prices are going up and quantities are being constrained. But we're making an inventory to make sure that we capture every crosswalk and crossing areas. So that's next on our project list. We're also looking concurrently at all the signage at those crossings to make sure they're the proper ones in the proper places. So those are ongoing projects, but we will be doing the crosswalks as our next street phase.
Okay. I have an item for old business. I want to give you an update on the E-code process. We received the bound E-code, or the published version of the new code. Judy has it in her office. It is not adopted yet, so it is not in use yet, but it is there, and it is 660-some pages. It's very impressive. But beginning next week, we will start the process for adopting the code. I will be speaking with our solicitor to make sure we've got everything on the calendar correctly so that we're adopting it in the right fashion. I uploaded the documents that General Code sent us that you can take a look at your leisure. They have written the ordinance for us. They have written the appendix to the ordinance for us. They have written us a checklist of what we have to do, how many times and in what manner and where we have to advertise this. And so it looks like we are come to the end of this process. And so take a look at it because we will have it on the agenda next week to start the first step, which is to authorize advertisement. Okay, any other old business? Any new business? Okay, public to be heard.
Hey everyone, Bill Heineman, 35 North Chancellor Street, and Chair of the Environmental Advisory Council. Speaking on behalf of that council and as an individual resident, I want to thank Borough Council for continuing to move the process of single trash hauler along. I know there's a lot of details still to be worked out, I guess 25 pages of detail, but appreciate the effort, and I'm also channeling many individual conversations I've had with other residents who are very supportive of this effort. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathy Finken. My husband Larry just went to get some papers that were in the car. We live at 241 Court Street, And we've been living there for 44 years, and it was part of a subdivision that was done by the borough in 77, 78. And we've been having difficulties with, over the decades, more recently, where people that are living at the property, there were 2 properties involved in this subdivision. They come before the borough to do work, and they don't disclose any of the facts that they're part of a subdivision. And for example, there were people that came to apply for a fence, and they had the fence going across our driveway, closing it off. And they never disclosed this to the borough, and then they got permission to put a fence up. And of course, the borough didn't have members any longer that were familiar with our property and the fact that there's a road that goes into our yard. So it was approved. And then the individuals sometimes think they've gotten permission to put a fence across the driveway. That's not the issue for now. The issue that we have now is that there was an illegal apartment in a barn that was part of the other property of our subdivision in 2008. And the borough, they got caught by the borough and had a cease and desist. However, the borough and the joint sewer authority never bothered to ask them where they hooked up on the sewer for this illegal apartment that had a kitchen and a bathroom and a washer and dryer. And only 2 weeks ago, we found out that it was hooked up to our sewer line. Now the people that are living there and own that barn are applying for a demolition permit. So applying for a demolition permit and saying they have plumbing and electricity, when actually the plumbing is illegal hookup to our line. And we have been having big problems with our sewer line. For example, the previous people that live in that big house right there built a really big house and dug a huge hole in the ground and broke our sewer line. And they said they would have it fixed when they did all of their sewer line, but they didn't. They had a member of their family fix it in an improper way. And in April, it collapsed, and it was illegally and improperly done. And so Zoom Drain came for several $1,000s and fixed it. Then we had this rock in our sewer line. That cost $1,700. So we were wondering, where's this rock coming from? So Zoom Drain came back out, and they said there's something north of your line. And we discovered that the barn is hooked up illegally to our sewer line. Now, that's going to cost like $3,500. But we have a little dilemma, because Zoom Drain will not disconnect it without someone saying it shouldn't be there. So I talked to Warren Gormley, and he was very reluctant to talk to Zoom Drain to tell them, and they know because the sewer authority sent out one of their people to put dye in the sewer line that's beside the barn and verified that it in fact is hooked up to our sewer line. But he is not comfortable to write them something. And in order for us to have this corrected, we need to have someone say that it's illegal hookup. And it was an apartment that got a cease and desist back in 2008. No one ever bothered to wonder where in the world did they hook this illegal apartment up to. And
Well, in fact, what they did was they capped it right where it left the building. So In effect, you could reconnect it in 5 minutes.
And the people who currently live there were told by the previous people that all they had to do was just hook up there. And,
And we don't know if that line goes underneath the driveway and then connects somehow to our sewer line, whether that's even correctly done.
and whenever it rains a lot, we get things like this. And Michael from the Sewer Authority told us that our line could be condemned by having rocks and things come through it. And having lived where we do since I was 20 and I'm in my 70s now, our sewer sat peacefully under the ground in a sewer easement, which runs because it was all one property during the subdivision, and it shows on the subdivision map where it was. But we would just like to be able to disconnect the barn from our sewer line, because the people that are there now want to demolish it, and they say they want to put a garage, but if you read carefully the permit that they, or whatever it's called, you know, the request for demolishing, they said they're going to put a 2-story dwelling and that they have plumbing and electricity available to them. And there really is not a legitimate plumbing there. And, you know, I feel that the borough, when they realized that there was an illegal apartment put on this property where there was never anything there. I mean, it was a barn that was built on the dirt. It was, in 1992, a cement floor was put in and all sorts of things, and because of the close connection of us having this road that goes across it, you know, we didn't report it. I had a long conversation with Sue Turner about, you know, how often neighbors are put in the position of having to police their neighbors, and the dilemma that is. And we would just like if the borough could perhaps give us a letter that we could give Zoom Drain saying that there was an illegal apartment put there, and that what the borough required of them, or the zoning or whoever required it of them, is they had to tear out the kitchen, tear out the bathroom, tear out everything. But they left the connection in the ground that goes to our sewer line.
Okay, Mr. Solicitor, is this a thing, should we be referring her to our code enforcement officer?
There's a lot here, and I'm sure I only have heard a small amount. But yeah, I think that's probably the first place to start looking at whether or not this apartment was hooked up illegally. The other issue is obviously the sewer authority and Zoom Drain talking about disconnecting. You know, it sounds like if they're hooking up a barn, that's an illegal hookup. That's not what's supposed to be going into a wastewater system. You're saying this is just like a floor drain on the...
No, there's a 3-bay barn back there.
I misunderstood. I didn't understand.
And in 2008, the people who lived there at that time, who subsequently left and had foreclosure, and it was quite a mess, had put an apartment in there. And they were caught with the apartment, and they had a cease and desist, but no one ever addressed, where did you put your electricity, whose electricity were you taking, whose plumbing were you hooking up to? And it was only been about 3 weeks, we found out that it was us. And, you know, it's very concerning when you have somebody from the sewer authority telling you that if you continue to have rocks and dirt coming in, that our sewer line would be condemned. You want to be able to disconnect it, and you need to have someone say it's illegal.
I think it needs to go to code enforcement officer.
You need to speak with Frank Huber. Yeah.
Frank, is he?
Okay, he's our new code enforcement officer.
Is he the zoning officer?
Zoning and code, yes, and he is the person you need to talk to. I suggest you make an appointment with him. He's in the office on Tuesday and Friday afternoon.
Right. We spoke with him on Friday, and he was telling us that there's kind of a problem with a lot of the zoning, that records for the zoning were taken, and different kinds of things. And,
Well, but this sounds like this predates, this goes back to 2008, so there may be things, there would be things in the file.
I've gone through all the files.
Yeah. So my suggestion is that you make an appointment to sit down with him and have him help you figure out how to negotiate this as quickly and as easily as possible.
And, I would just like to make a suggestion to the borough, because being an old timer now, and when I came here, I was, 20-something, that a lot of the people who preceded you all have, gone to their great reward or gone to Florida or somewhere else. And so they aren't as familiar with things that happened before. And in the borough here, I've been a little amazed where at Dr. Leicester's property, for example, they put in a common driveway. And down by us, where Doyle Realty and they put in, another, a shared driveway. And the things that come along with that. And, as time passes, people that move here and they're younger, they maybe weren't even alive when, like, our subdivision took place. It's difficult for people on borough council to be familiar with that kind of thing, that you might consider that when you have someone fill an application and they write on an application, that maybe they could, there could be a question about, is your property in any way conjoined or, overlaying on someone else's? Because there are a few that are like this. I mean, most of the easements in town have gotten taken away. The people next door to us, theirs is gone, and I think Eric Johnson was gone from Claude White. But there are a lot of these things that have been around for like forever, and then they become a problem for other people. And, maybe on your form to ask that kind of thing, just to clarify, because this barn issue, Larry, they came to join Historic Commission, which Larry is a member of, and I've been a member, and both of us have been chairmen at one time. We have no problem with this barn being taken down. However, we have a problem with the barn being taken down when it's going to, connected to our sewer line. And we have a problem with it being taken down if they come and put a big dumpster in the road that's in front of it, because it's also our road.
You need to speak with Frank Huber. We can't, as council, there's nothing we can do. We would be referring you to our code enforcement officer, because he can go through the records. You can produce whatever you have. If there was a subdivision, there are subdivision plans somewhere.
Right, we have,
it would be you have all those things. You need to go and speak.
This is how old it is.
Right. You need to go and speak with him, because he is the person who's empowered to look at applications and decide whether what they're doing is allowed or not allowed, and can help you, guide you to take care of this. And it sounds like it's fairly urgent, since you don't want your sewer condemned.
No, we really need,
But
because
you
it
need
seems whenever it rains,
Right.
we have additional problems.
Right. You need to go talk to him, and I'd suggest that you can call him on his cell phone, text him. Actually, I think he prefers to be texted, to set up an appointment and say, this is when we want to come in and go through this with you and get this taken care of.
Okay, but I think it's something maybe you should ponder when you do your application forms, to maybe somewhere, somehow ask if there's some sort of connection. Like, I know up by the water company, there's that sort of little cul-de-sac that's sort of a private community in some way, their little road.
Well, when you go for a zoning permit, that's what our zoning officer has to look at, the property, has to look at the lot.
But if they're not told,
but in this case, you're saying that there is an issue, so you need to go and speak with him.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying in the future, because we plan on being carried out as ashes from our property. I don't know if he'll be around to do it, but
Okay.
anyway.
I hope you can get this taken care of, but do make an appointment with him.
And it sounds like if you're getting debris, that there must be some
Break-in.
compromise to
There-
the
a
pipe
break.
up there, which could fall under also, there's a property maintenance part of the code, which again, the compliance officer could.
Well, there's probably some sort of break when there was something done there. I just think that the borough is old enough and has still a few kinky things around, that maybe you should consider just having someone, because the zoning officer, he doesn't live here, most of them anymore. Used to always be a resident from here, so they were familiar. That maybe they're asked,
Right.
you know, of something.
That's a good point. And all this information would be something that would have to be documented somewhere in the property files.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Hi, guys. I will make this quick. Courtney Lang, 102 Jefferson Street. And I wanted to circle back to our short-term rental. I would urge council to give a solid description, especially with what they're dealing with an old barn. I have an old barn. It's not insulated. It only has electric. And I couldn't imagine somebody living up there for even a weekend. But I think usually, and I'm sure Mike probably also knows this, but it probably needs to be insulated. It needs heat, needs running water. We probably should establish that it's wholly owned. And I think, Bob, you were the one that recommended that we have a permit to say they could do a short-term rental?
Excuse me, we have an ordinance that very shortly will be available for when we advertise it for adoption.
Yeah.
It's very detailed in terms of permit, inspection by the code enforcement officer to make sure that it's safe. It has all kinds of requirements. So those things have already been addressed in this ordinance. So when it is ready for public view, you can feel free to look through it and make comment at a public hearing.
That would be great. I have one other thing. With the sewer drains being cleaned, on Jefferson, there's an issue with dog,
When you said sewer,
sorry, storm drains. We've been here for a little while. Yes, storm drains. Jefferson, there is an issue with doggy bags being thrown down them. And it's more than one, and if you look down them on any given day, you're going to see a couple dozen down there. And even with the placard that says this goes to a clean waterway, that's what our neighbors are doing over there. And even though we clean those, maybe we should have some kind of note to our neighbors.
could you give Judy, after the meeting, give Judy a note as to the exact location of those? Because maybe a more frequent inspection of those. We have lots of people walking in the borough.
Yeah,
A lot of people come to the borough to walk,
right.
and they bring their friends.
Yes,
And a lot of us have put up little doggy signs like, don't
right.
visit here. But this is a new problem, but that is a serious problem.
Right.
We-
Yes.
We've addressed a variety of things, including porta potties that became public toilets. on
Yep.
construction.
I've seen that too, yeah.
So this is a different kind of a problem, but again, it's a health issue,
Correct.
okay? So if you could let Judy know where those are, then we can have our maintenance people take a second look at them more frequently, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Because we have to report the flow and all kinds of reports for what is going through there.
Yeah.
So for people to put hazardous, I'm gonna use the phrase hazardous waste, we're creating a health problem.
Right. Yeah.
So
And,
maybe we'll
and
put something in the fall bulletin, we do a semi-annual bulletin, to tell people, please don't do that. We keep trash bins on State Street, we clean them up every other day.
right.
So there's alternative ways to handle the problem, we just have to educate people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that always dark back there?
Not always. Yeah, it's like the sun is setting in the rear
We know
hall.
you're there, so don't fail us.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
we are adjourned.
Thank you for being at our first meeting in 18 months.
Great seeing people in person.
It is.